Good evening, good day, and welcome to you. Uh, Most of you were on retreat with us this weekend, and so I hope you had a wonderful day of integration. That you took the time and that you continue to take the time to allow these energies to integrate. A lot happens on retreat, and sometimes we don't get the full effect, the full experience until right after the retreat, as the energies are integrating, deepening within you. And so, as we start tonight, well, I better do the announcements. I always forget about those. So, some big announcements. The first one is I'm going to be teaching this week. So we're in the month of August 2025, but in the first 2 weeks of September, I'm going to be traveling, and most of those groups will be canceled. So next Sunday and the one after that, probably going to be traveling. And so you're always welcome to look on Facebook, because if my plans get canceled, which often happens in life, there's a fair chance that I'll be here. But just assume that those first 2 weeks I won't be around, and I'm going to encourage you to meet among yourselves and continue to meditate together and just share in this deepening of the truth. Okay, that's a big announcement. But again, I will be here this week for the Kundalini group and meditation. That will be the 27th, 28th of August. Okay. And the next big thing that we have on the list is in the Bahamas this spring, March 29th of 2026. I guess that's the next year. We'll be at the Shivananda ashram, for a couple of days at a teaching at a spiritual awakening symposium. Okay, those are the big announcements, and I'm going to invite us to shut down our eyes, to open our hearts, and begin to breathe and to feel and to soften and open. And right away, I invite you to notice what is here that is awake, that is aware. What's here right now? That is awake to the sound of my voice. And so we're giving ourselves permission to open to our most essential nature. This quiet presence, which is always already here, always already awake. And so right away, we are becoming aware of awareness itself. And for many of us, as we become aware of awareness itself, sometimes the experience is so obvious, yet so subtle, that we miss the experience. Our ego mind, our thinking mind is trained to look for that which is loud. And awareness is silent and spacious and peaceful. And as we open to awareness, can have a similar feeling as looking at the sky. It's immense yet empty. It is timeless and eternal. And so we are opening the door to that which is timeless and eternal. And I'm going to invite us to experience, to acknowledge awareness in all directions. And so for most of us, it's easy to be awake and aware, feeling out the front of the body. Often individuals experience it in the front of the forehead, but I'm going to invite us to experience it the whole front side of the body. Being awake, aware, ever present to the entirety of life in front of you. And next, I'm going to invite us to begin to get a sense of awareness waking up on the back side. So along the spine, all the way down to the heels. And being open, awake and aware on the backside. And just noticing what it's like as we open up in this way. Then I invite you to begin to awaken awareness on the left side. And with each direction we're feeling, we're opening into infinity, to the horizon. Just like the sky has no edges, neither does your consciousness. To next feeling out the right side. And you might notice that one side or the other might have more or less contraction. And with the space of awareness, any and all contractions are included. Just gently noticing them, we can soften there. And just beginning to notice, well, what does it feel like directly? When we open up like the sky. So continuing to soften and open. To play, to experiment with being, spaciousness in all directions, and we can open above, and we can open below, and having this sense of 360 degrees, like in every possible direction. Our consciousness is expanding. And you notice this feels really different than normal, everyday human consciousness, which tends to be centered in the forehead. It tends to create a very limiting experience. But as awareness opens and you allow yourself to expand and to truly be this expansion, truly be this hugeness, you may notice that that problems just don't really exist in this realm of consciousness. And in no way am I saying we should avoid problems or even try to transcend them, but we're just noticing that to the degree that your consciousness expands, it's to the same degree that we feel and experience freedom directly. Freedom from the past, freedom from the future, freedom from being this isolated, separate human being. And we can even notice our humanity is still here, but again, as consciousness expands, it comes with this great quality of peace, this great quality of okayness. I am okay. Life is okay. And sometimes it can even feel as if it's beyond okay. Now, of course, as I look around the room, I see a couple folks with stubborn minds and persistent thinking. And if that's you, I invite you to notice Awareness as the very space out of which the sense of me arises, sense of personality arises. Awareness is the space in which the ego arises with all the thinking and the superego component. But again, I invite us to notice, instead of really paying attention to those thoughts and repetitions of habit in the past, to simply notice that these repetitions are happening within space. And as we align with space, as we come to know ourselves as space, all kinds of things may come and go. But without much problem, without much concern. But if we ignore this space, which is what most human beings do all day, and we give our full attention to our thoughts, our thinking, our egoic reality, you just notice yourself as being much more limited. And of course, the invitation in this moment, the invitation of the spiritual path is to know oneself as limitless. Most of us have a PhD in being limited. And the invitation this evening is to be limitless. And for some of you, you may just slip into this with great ease. And others, it may take a gentle effort, surrendering the thoughts, saying no to the thoughts. You're trying to anchor an awareness, losing it. But either way, we simply return to noticing this immense, spacious nature that you are. It always is. Like none of us has to work at being aware of my voice. Awareness is already awake. It's already present. It's already fully here. Fully here. And as we open to our primordial nature, our essential nature, we experience great freedom. And so for the purposes of this teaching moment, I'm going to invite us to call this stage one. I am awake and aware of my essence. My essence, this essence, that which is awake and aware, is vast, spacious, and free. And from this space of great humility, I'm going to invite us now, next, stage two, open to grace. And so I'm inviting awareness to be vast, to go from horizon to horizon. But at the same time, just to gently notice, to have some attention in the crown chakra. And as we do so, you may notice this subtle pressure of the Divine Mother is gently pouring down into us. Within this Sangha, within this community, the Divine Mother showers us with this energy, an energy of transformation, an energy of divinization. Divinization is a process of the body, while becoming divinized. And so as we open, you may notice just this dancing radiance flowing down from heaven and beginning to pour into the crown and the third eye. And actually having an effect on the physicality, on the mentality, and on the emotionality. And of course, the effect that it has is it's gently upgrading, lifting our consciousness, our body, out of the vibrational frequency of simply being an animal. Or some of us may feel a little bit like a caveman, a cave person. So we're inviting the grace of God to come and to work on our mind, to upgrade our mind. In a similar way, when we're little kids and we go to kindergarten, and eventually we end up in middle school, and eventually high school, and eventually maybe college or university. And our consciousness grows and expands and it upgrades. In this case, we're relying upon the divine to transform, to transmute this body, mind into something greater. And so again, we're noticing awake awareness, vast and spacious. We're having an attitude of being humble and open. And this light is pouring down into us. And I hope you can join me in smiling at our old, outdated thinking mind, and we're inviting a new mind, a greater reality. And so as we continue in this way, you may notice by now this energy of divinization can feel like a dancing light. waking up, perhaps throughout the upper half of the body, feeling in your fingertips, and palms of your hands, the arms, the chest, washing over the shoulders. And so we are consciously cooperating with the energy of evolution, consciously choosing to say, yes, God, I'll be happy if you evolve us humans, if you evolve us. It's one thing to be awake. Sometimes when we're awake, we look at our body, our humanity, and we see, gosh, it's just like this old, outdated system. But in this moment, we are awake. We are inviting the 2.0 version to begin to come online. So instead of experiencing the body purely as a flesh body full of desires and wants and needs and feelings of separation, jealousy and tribal consciousness and all that stuff, we're saying, God, you take all that, and will you replace it with something greater? So we're breathing, we're feeling, we're softening, beginning to experience the body. As this radiant light. And of course, just like with any evolutionary experience, there might be little points of pain or pressure or heat. As this process of alchemy awakens throughout us. And so we're just gently noticing, well, what is it like? As this light wakes up in us. What is it like to be a vast space of freedom? And again, if anyone here has a very persistent mind, we are surrendering this mind. We are knowing and trusting that there is a greater mind. Knowing and trusting that humanity at the current stage of development is not the end of the journey. It's not the end of the journey. God didn't make us just to be tribal creatures and kill each other. God made us as these evolutionary beings. We're here to realize great divinity. And so we're continuing to breathe and to feel, to smile at God's grace, to smile as that which is awake, and to humbly surrender all the aspects of our humanity which are obsolete. Just as none of us would be very attached to our computer system, our computer that we had in 1995. We don't need to be too attached to an old survival mind, an old habitual dance of fight and flight and victimization and all that type of thing. We can say, yes, I will gladly surrender this. And God, I invite you to show me something greater. And so as this energy of grace continues to flow, washing down over the entirety of the body, noticing this radiance and the crown, the third eye, the throat, the heart, the chest, the third chakra, the hara, the root, the legs, the feet. And because this body is actually one with the earth and is made of the earth, we invite this energy of divinization to flow all the way down and impacting the earth itself. Inviting the earth to awaken. Inviting the earth to be divinized. Oh, and with that, you might notice the energy intensifying as when we include the earth. You may notice this intensification. And so, if you like, you can gently open your eyes and I'll welcome you to Satsang. But I invite you just to stay with your experience and just to allow this energy to continue to flow down through you. Blessing the earth. My God, the earth could use it. The earth could use it. Often we blame humans for so much destruction of the earth. And of course, there's a great truth to that. If we came and visited the earth from a spaceship, just to have a little fun. We look down upon the earth, we'd see Earth is a pretty violent world. All kinds of creatures are competing, fighting, and eating each other alive, literally. It's a pretty violent world. And we're inviting the earth, nature, humanity to evolve, to evolve, to invite this world, this planet, to awaken to a new realm of consciousness, new realm of expression. And so we'll just continue to allow this to flow in the background. And I'm going to respond to a question that was sent in, a really beautiful question uh, from my dear friend Niall. Hi, Craig. Thanks so much for the retreat this weekend. Things have been difficult for me in the last couple of years, and my spiritual practice has been hit and miss. But I hope this weekend has reignited this for me. And I'll say this, I'll just agree with this. A lot of us, sometimes we're not so disciplined on the path. We might kind of, meditate for a while and then, get busy with this and that. But anytime you show up on retreat, it's like immediately you get into the fast lane of spirituality. And retreat is a time for us to go really deep. And of course, that's what we did this weekend. That's what we're doing right now. And so I'm just going to cheer you on, Niall. And so he continues on. I was in bed trying to sleep before session 6. And all of a sudden, I experienced lots of grace flowing into me. So I got up and just sat with the grace for an hour before the session. This happens to me fairly regularly. I could be sitting having a cup of tea in my kitchen, and all of a sudden I feel this light flowing into me. It feels more subtle than what I experienced on retreat. So it's all good, but here's my question. So this experience, and he puts the word experience in quotes, as light/grace from God. So I know this experience as light, as grace from God. At what point do you realize this as who and what you are, and not something happening to you from the outside? Do you build up a stack of these experiences and then eventually realize it's what you are? Question mark. Or do you need to have a massive spiritual event to make you see your true nature clearly? Yeah, these are good questions. He goes on and says, and just in case you're wondering, I do believe you when you say this light is who and what you are, but I don't know it to be me yet. Niall. Yeah, Niall, this is a great question. And often in the great Buddhist traditions, they'll debate about this question back and forth. Is there a difference between awake awareness and spiritual experiences? And, the answer is yes and no. No, there's no difference. Yes, there is, and no, there's not. It's like any great truth, it's going to be paradoxical. It's going to be more of a both and. Now, in the path of the Buddha tried just to sit and to open, to sit and to awaken. And that's, his teaching, his contribution to spirituality was there is something here that is primary, which is awake and aware. There's something that is here that is conscious. And this consciousness, which is awake and aware, expands in every direction. It has no edges, it has no boundaries. It is this vast immensity of being. It is beyond the coming and going of good times and bad times. It's beyond age, it's beyond gender, it's beyond the movement of the mind, polarity of the mind, the duality of the mind. And, of course, in the way I teach, I invite us, just like I did today, to realize this stage one, which most people, like as this stabilizes, we might call it a spiritual awakening, we might call it enlightenment. And I don't really want to get into the differences in those two, but let's just call it being awake. So what Buddha means is awake. Awake. And as one who is awake, we see clearly from a space that is timeless and eternal. There's a foundational reality of being. Being awake is not always synonymous with being God. By God in this moment, I'm speaking about God, the creator. Now, again, I don't want to get, too much into the difference, but it is the same and it is also different. But I'm just going to call it different in this moment, just for the sake of argument. And so God, the creator of all things, all realms, view of I, of all that is. God has this immense power, and one of the powers is the power of grace. And the way I'm viewing grace in this moment is grace is this power, this transmission, which reminds us of our divinity, of our divinity. It's the primary thing that grace does. So if you're sitting, let's say you're sitting and you're not an awakened Buddha, you're sitting and you're having a hard day. And as grace enters you, and sometimes we'll notice that grace will just come to us. Sometimes on a terrible day. I love it when it comes on a terrible day. And what grace does, like let's say grace comes in the form of peace, is this peace comes and it awakens us out of this judgmental human perspective that this is a bad day. Just because I'm a father, I read a lot of kids' books, and there's a book, I can't remember what it's called, but it's about a little boy, a little somebody who had a terribly rotten, no good day. And it just goes on and on. The story about the kid who had a terrible, rotten, no good day. But let's say that's us. And as grace comes into us, it has this power to transform, to transmute, to lift us up and out of the pain that we are in. And so as we receive this spiritual experience, seemingly from the outside, grace has this power to shift us into a perspective of truth. Let's say it shifts us into the perspective of Buddha nature. And ideally, I don't know if ideally is the right word, but I'll just say it. And ideally, if we have this experience over and over again, we begin to teach our body, we begin to entrain our consciousness that, oh, there's this other way to live, this other way to be. And we become peace. We become light. We become love. We realize love. We know it as ourself. We know it as ourself. And so grace, in this case, the way I'm teaching tonight is a great reminder, a reminder of your fundamental nature, a reminder of what you are. It's one of the reasons we go on retreat is to receive this reminder in a big way, in a big dose. Some people, like in the psychedelic world, they travel to the jungles of Peru or whatever. They have a big cup of a certain kind of tea. And that gives them a big reminder, kind of blasts them into an experience beyond their mind. A retreat is very similar. But now I'm going to just say something a little silly just because I like to have a little fun sometimes. Sometimes God can be like, I'll just say this, like in the 70s, we used to call this guy the pusher man. The first one's free. The first one's free. And, I can tell you, like, I had this experience when I was a young kid. And I worked at this nursing home and I had a good buddy, my buddy Joe. And Joe, he was always like getting in trouble and he worked a different shift than me and he worked with the pusher man. And one day the pusher man hooked him up with a big bag of something. And, he came, over, we all met at, somebody's house. I can't remember. It might have been my house. He's like, hey, look what I got. I got a big bag of the greens. And, we were all just a bunch of, 14-year-old kids. And we're like, all right, this is great. This is amazing. And so, he shared it around. And as he shared it around, he started to turn pale. And I looked at him and I was like, Joe, like, what's going on here, man? Like, why are you freaking out all of a sudden? And he said, well, he gave me just like a little bit for free, but the rest of this I was supposed to sell. And he said, if I don't come back with all this money, he's going to break my legs. And luckily God's not, God doesn't, treat us this way. But with God says, okay, look, the first one's free. Like, I'm going to give you this grace for free. But now, if you want to live this truth, God is going to require a payment. And the payment is not, I want to be crystal clear here, the payment is not to the spiritual teacher. I'll get myself out of this equation. The payment is God wants all of your obsolete thoughts. God wants all of your fear. God wants all of your false desires, your false idols. And as we pay God, for this experience of peace, we receive more peace. More peace because our mind is empty of the past, empty of attachment, empty of hatred or jealousy or fear. And so that's why on the spiritual path, there's so much teaching, so much emphasis about surrender. What is surrender? In a silly way, in a metaphorical way, the way I'm teaching tonight, surrender is our payment to God. It's letting go of that which is old, letting go of that, the thing that veils our awake awareness. We're letting go of the thing that veils our divinity. And so God gives us the grace free. But if we want to live again, I'll just have some fun with words. We want to live the high life being the awake, the expanded consciousness life. We have to surrender our lower dimensional thoughts, our lower frequency thoughts, the thoughts that hold us back, the thoughts that limit reality. Like the way Jesus taught, you can't serve two masters. You can't expect to live in a higher frequency and at the same time be holding on to lower frequency thoughts. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And so just like if we open to peace, whether it's inner peace or God showers us with peace through the avenue of grace, if we open to peace, but we have an animal mind that's full of hatred or jealousy, or we want to, kill our neighbor, our brother, our sister because they wronged us when we were 12 years old or 14 years old or 16 years old. If we hold on to the past, we won't be able to live in peace in the present moment. And so in order to stabilize in peace, we have to have a peaceful mind, a peaceful human nature. And this may require long periods of meditation. It may require lots of time in therapy. It may require doing yoga or body work because our body's so full of tension and it's in the habit of fear, it's in the habit of confusion or whatever it is. All these things need to be surrendered. And there's a funny thing that happens is when you are surrendered, when you are empty, it's very easy to be awake. And it's very easy to be just tuned in the flow, in alignment with the grace of God as a lifestyle. And so there's the lifestyle of being awake in one's consciousness. That's the Buddhist path. It tends to be the path of how most non-dual teachers teach is we're in this lifestyle, this life choice of surrendering our thoughts, not believing our thoughts, not believing in the confusion, not believing in the insanity of the mind, but rather believing in our vast, spacious nature. And again, I'm going to call that stage one. Stage two is us opening to the Creator, to the intelligence of life, and having an open channel, a clear path, a full connection, like we're plugged in. We got the Ethernet connection right between us and God. We're plugged in directly and receiving grace all the time. And so we'll call this stage two. And we'll call this retreat the opening to freedom and opening to grace retreat. Like that's what we're talking about here. That's the theme of this retreat. It's opening to freedom and opening to grace. But most of us, we might show up on retreat and we plug into God, when we're meditating. But as soon as we're done meditating, we unplug from God and we plug back into our old thinking mind. And we, do whatever the old thinking mind does. Like what my wife says that men do is they just walk around in circles all day going do to do to do do to do to do. That's what my wife's idea of men is. I think it's just really a funny thing that she says that men do, but maybe it's true. They just walk around in circles, do to do to do. And do to do to do might be, I'm going to watch the sports game, whatever it is. I'm going to root for my team. I'm going to, because I grew up in this area of the country and this is my tribe and I'm going to cheer on my tribe, do to do to do. And this is the kind of things that humans do. I was born on this border, and so I'm a Russian. I identify as a Russian, so I have to hate the Ukrainians, even though they're my cousins, or whatever it is. And we go back and forth with this tribal consciousness. And the invitation of the spiritual path is we plug directly into God. And we say to God, thy will be done. I invite your will, God, to be done in this life. That's the surrender. That's the payment. And God says, great. I'm going to pay you by showing you a greater life. A greater life. And I want to be crystal clear here. It's not greater according to the ego. It's a greater consciousness. It's an unlimited life. For the ego, it normally says a greater life. It means I'm richer, I'm more famous. I think that's what people want, right? Rich and famous. I kind of freeze my body and I stay in that age between 18 and 22 and I'm just like running in this tip-top shape and, everything's great and I'm having all kinds of pleasurable experiences. But, God's like, no, this is beyond pleasure. This is beyond age. I want to show you that which is timeless. Timeless. I want to show you something that is beyond form, beyond the limitation of form, beyond the limitation of gender, beyond the limitation of tribe, beyond the limitation of wealth. Let me show you something quite incredible. And that's the invitation here. As we open to our primordial nature, that's just becoming sane. Becoming sane. And in Zen, like that's the whole point of Zen. The whole purpose in Zen, the whole definition of enlightenment is just to see life as it is without any extra commentary, without any judgment, without wishing it to be different or this or that, just to see life as it is. But in this tradition, that we tend to follow the teachings of Sri Aurobindo, who he woke up, he saw everything clearly, he saw things as they are. And he said, okay, this is great. Clarity is great, freedom is great, sanity is great, but the earth is still on fire. Our brothers and sisters are suffering. Humanity's still bombing each other. We need God to come into us and to transmute this flesh, transmute this mind, transmute our emotional nature so that we can evolve into being great beings of light here upon planet Earth. So that all the people who will be born in the future won't suffer the same way we suffered. And I want us just to imagine, just for a moment, if we never evolved beyond being just the cave people, being the Neanderthals. I always try to make the the caveman. I feel like that's not politically correct. I feel like I need to call them cave people, but that's my evolution here. But like, imagine if we never evolved beyond being Neanderthals. It would just be outrageous. We'd just be smashing each other with stones and clubs, and it's just like a horrific way to live. And there's even tribes who are like cannibals. They would eat each other. It's just like it'd be insane. It'd be insane. With the teaching of just any great master, not just Aurobindo, but any great master is like, come on, humanity, let's grow and evolve beyond our current stage of evolution. Now, in order for all of us to do that, it requires that we are deeply surrendered and we step into this Christ-like nature. I'm just going to touch on all the traditions tonight just for fun. But the Christ-like nature is like what Jesus did. That he laid down his life as an example of something greater. He said, okay, they're going to nail me to a cross. I'm not going to fight back. I'm going to stand here in the truth and show humanity this model that there's a greater way to live. But we don't just fight each other back and forth. In the olden days, what did they do? They threw rocks and, had slingshots and this type of thing. In the modern age, we lob bombs at each other. I guess now it's drones is what it is. We did drone warfare. But at some point, it'd be lovely, for the sake of our children, for the sake of everything after us, for the sake of the plant and animal kingdoms here on planet Earth, if we lay down our lives, if we lay down all that which is false. And as we do this, Niall, we begin to stabilize in that which is awake and divine. And divine. And that's the invitation of the Sangha. That's the invitation of God. That's the invitation of evolution, because they're all one and the same. All one and the same. I don't know how anyone could ever separate God from evolution. That just seems just such foolishness. Like, God is evolution. Where I was born in Kentucky, I just like right down the road from where I lived. There's this really funny museum. It's called the Creation Museum. It's like a fundamentalist Christian museum, and they have people who are like cave people who are riding on the backs of dinosaurs. And it's just like this funny thing. I've never been there before, but my cousin, he went. He told me all about it, and he said it was just a real hoot. It was a real hoot. I think in Kentucky they have Noah's Ark as well, like a rendition of it. The real Noah's Ark. Well, I won't get into it, but that's a conspiracy theory. We'll save that for another class. The real Noah's Ark, the real Ark of the Covenant, I believe, is in Ethiopia. That's what my sources are telling me. Anyways, if we want to move from being just a human being having spiritual experiences to one who knows himself as divine, well, we have to plug into God and never unplug. And there's this beautiful non-dual experience that happens, even though all the non-dual teachers, they hate talking about God. They despise it. They make some rule that you're not allowed to talk about God because that's a dualistic thing. But I'll tell you what, that's a dualistic teaching, whatever it is they're teaching. When you open to God and you plug directly into God, the thing with God is God is like an ultimate codependent lover. When you merge into God, God merges into you, and you become this one thing. You become this one thing. Your life begins to be holy. Holy. And I can tell you this, like, I am a very normal, average Joe. But ever since I was a kid, I've always just been plugging into God. And as I plug into God, my life, my experience becomes holy while chopping wood and carrying water, while just doing the everyday things that we do as humans. There's nothing extraordinary about my life, outwardly, but inwardly, because I've just merged into God again and again and again. Because of this, because I've just told God, you have full permission to be here with me at all times. This is what I want. This is my highest desire. It's my highest intention. I plug into you. Will you plug into me? And the answer is yes. The answer is yes. And because of this, Nile, God just keeps merging into me in deeper and fuller ways. And it makes for quite an extraordinary life. Even though on the outside, some of you might think, oh, it's just a normal, middle-aged white boy. It's what my oldest daughter calls me. Just some normal middle-aged white boy. That's what she calls me. But she also knows, of course, that's not the truth. She knows her dad is deeply plugged into God, and God is deeply plugged into me. And again, I want to really clarify, it's not because there's anything at all special about me. It's not because I'm the chosen one. It's rather because I chose God. God has chosen all of us already. God has chosen all of us already. But when you choose God back, you start to feel like the chosen one. And your life becomes quite incredible. Quite incredible. And so either way, Niall, I want to make this clear. There is a cost for admission. I'll say that a little differently. Normally admission is free. It's free, but there's a cost for stabilization. Like if you want to stick around, you want to see the full show, if you want to have the full experience in an abiding way. And when you have those negative thoughts, when you have fearful thoughts, when you have confused thoughts, when we have addictive thoughts, if we want to continue to stay awake or to stay plugged into God, we have to surrender that which is less than in order to align with, to embody that which is greater. And this is just how life works. I'll just tell one more story and then I'll cut us all loose. Just for fun. This is how life works in every department of evolution. So when I was young, I had this older brother, and my older brother, he was like the coolest kid in high school. He had so many friends. He was super cool. And, I grew up in the Midwest. There wasn't much going on in the Midwest. My older brother was the one who had, like he would, when he was 16, he looked like he was 24. So he'd have just like this full, beard, and he looked like an adult. And so, he could go into the store and buy the good stuff that you wanted when you were a high school kid. But anyways, my brother just had this thing. There was just like a silent understanding between me and him. My brother would always hook me up. He took me to all the cool parties. I got to hang out with all the cool kids. And I could do this as long as I acted like he did. If I acted like a cool, mature senior in high school. But if I acted like a middle school boy, he'd kick me out of that club. He'd say, no, I don't want you around. You're a pain in the butt. You're a pain in the butt. You're being a fool. You're acting like an idiot. But if you act cool, Craig, you come along for the ride. You can come to the show. You can come to the concert. You can come to the party. I'll take you out to 2 a.m. or whatever it was. And you can drink, you can party with us, like you can run with the cool crowd. But you can't act like a child. He never said that to me, but it's just something I knew. And with the grace of God, it's the same way. If we show up in the company of divinity and we start telling God that we don't like God's world, we don't like God's way, we know a better way. If we argue with God, if we argue with reality, if we're inherently negative, if we align with our animal nature, if we align with voices of hatred or tribal consciousness, all these things will get us kicked out of grace, get us kicked out of heaven, get us kicked out of Buddha nature. It's just like a basic truth in life. If you want to, live at this higher vibrational frequency, well, you have to have a higher vibrational frequency. You have to align with that. You can't bring the lower into the higher unless you're bringing it there to surrender it, to give it up. To say, God, I give you this. And in return, God shows us the next level, a greater way of being. And this is just how life works. It's how evolution works. It's how the spiritual path works. It's how growth works. It's all one movement. It's all one movement. If we want to live an abiding awakening, if we want to live plugged into God, we need to live in a serene way, a truthful way, a deeply honest way, a loving way, a compassionate way, a kind way, a forgiving way. If we want to know silence as our nature, we can't just be busy running around with every thought that goes through our head. Like that's just not how it works. And so in one sense, the spiritual path is so utterly simple. So utterly simple. It's our mind that complicates it. And it's our force of habit that makes it challenging. Just because our mind just tends to be this persistent thing. But at some point, just through the power of free will, that's one of our spiritual superpowers. People don't realize it. Is we can wait for grace all day long, but we can also choose to align with grace. We can wait for Buddha nature just to strike us like lightning. But at some point, we have to choose it. Very hard to be awake if we're busy doubting God, doubting life, doubting our experience, doubting the truth, doubting love at every turn. And so, let us shut down our eyes. Let us invite this grace of God. Let us invite the awakening of humanity to flow throughout all of creation. May all of humanity wake up and surrender that which is old, that which is obsolete, that which is violent, that which is foolish, that which is immature, that which is tribal. Let us together step into the greatness, the harmony, the will, the unity, the realization of love through in and throughout all creation. And so much love to each of you, a deep bow of respect. And again, just as a gentle reminder, I'll be here teaching through through the end of this month, through Wednesday. But next Sunday and the following Sunday, the first 2 Sundays in September, I'm probably going to be gone. And those first 2 Wednesdays in September are probably going to be gone. But you can always check on Facebook and see, did Mr. Holliday's plans change? Did they get canceled? Was there a big forest fire and it just messed up his whole plan and he just stayed home and he's showing up and teaching anyways? And so that's always a possibility. But as of now, I'm going to, miss you the first 2 weeks. And so much love to each of you. Good night, everyone. Good night, good night, good night. Keep opening to these energies. Give yourself to God. And I'll see y'all sometime soon. Okay. Bye for now.